everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Tamika Younger, and I'm with Central Virginia Community College, and I want to give you a little information today on diabetes. Diabetes is actually a very prevalent disease here in the United States. In fact, the American Diabetes Association says that there are 25.8 million people in the United States with diabetes, and that includes adults and children. And as a matter of fact, that accounts for about 8.3% of the population. I think that's a great number, and so therefore it tells me that there's a great need for education as far as diabetes is concerned. Actually, when I looked at the statistics for diabetes, I can see that there are about 17.8 million people that are diagnosed with the disease, but then there's also another 8 million people who haven't been diagnosed yet, and so therefore do not even know they have the disease. And that's how we get that 25.8% of the population with diabetes. The highest ethnic group that has diabetes, or that we can account for that has diabetes, is the African American group. And actually, it equates to about 12.8% of the population that has diabetes in African Americans. And I think that's an astronomical number. So we really do need to understand what diabetes is and how we can prevent it. First of all, understanding that diabetes is the inability of your body or of your pancreas to be able to make enough insulin or to make any insulin at all so that your blood glucose will be normal. When we use insulin, or when we have insulin and our body is making insulin, insulin actually should be combined with glucose in order for glucose to get into the cells. So I like to think of insulin as the VIP into the cell, and so that glucose was able to get into that cell because of insulin. So therefore, if you don't have any insulin, then the glucose is not able to get from the blood into the body cells. And there's no energy that can be provided if that's the case. So if it cannot get from the blood into the cells, then that means that the blood glucose for someone who does not use insulin effectively is too high. And that's exactly what happens in diabetes. The people that suffer with diabetes have trouble keeping their blood glucose to normal level. Actually, there are two types of diabetes, actually three, but the two types that we'll talk about today are type 1 and type 2. And then there's a third type of diabetes that's considered gestational diabetes. Pregnant women normally get gestational diabetes. It's during the time that you are pregnant. But type 1 diabetes is what we consider to be insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus, or IDDM. And it usually is called, or has been called in the past, juvenile diabetes, because most of the time juveniles are the ones that are afflicted by this particular type of diabetes. It's considered an autoimmune disease, which means that our body has tried to fight something else and has in turn fought itself. And in this case, it's fought the pancreas and has made it unable to produce insulin at all. And so these people are going to be dependent on insulin to live. Type 2 diabetes involves people who are not insulin dependent. Their pancreas still makes some insulin, but just not enough. And so therefore, they have to treat this type of diabetes through diet and exercise, through medication, and maybe even through insulin if the pancreas gets to the point where it cannot any longer secrete any insulin. There are lots of factors that cause these things. There are lots of symptoms that cause diabetes, or symptoms that we see in people who have diabetes. Too numerous to name today, but I just want you to understand that diabetes is a very prevalent disease, and therefore it's something we need to look at and need to make sure that we are trying to prevent, because prevention is the key. Thank you so much for listening today.